Hi and welcome back. In this video we're going to begin to work on formatting the top part of our design, and specifically we're going to work with this top area here that contains our logo as well as our social media icons, our top navigation, and our banner. In a later video we're going to see how to do these drop down arrows, or how to do these drop downs on the menu, as well as how to make this banner rotate through. For right now, we're just going to be worried about setting them up and formatting them and getting them to appear the way we want them to appear. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to go back into Dreamweaver here, and I'm going to come back into my style sheet, my HTML page here. And you can see that after our wrapper div, the first div that we actually have is called the top div. And that actually contains two divs inside of it, a logo div and a div for the social media icons. Our logo div just contains our simple logo for our project here. Our social media div contains a paragraph as well as the navigation elements for the different social media icons that we have. And again, if we take a look at our completed project, we'll see there's the logo and there are the social media icons. So for this top area, we have it basically divided into two different segments. The logo, which is going to go to the left, and the social media elements, which are going to go to the right. So I switched back in here to Dreamweaver, and now let's go ahead and go to our style sheet here. And we're going to go ahead and create two ID styles. Actually, we're going to create three ID styles. First one we're going to create is for the top. Second one we're going to create is for the logo. And the third one we're going to go ahead and create is for the social media icons. And again, I've just created these sort of empty selectors here for us to begin to work with. And you'll remember when we were talking about our basic CSS properties, we mentioned that you can position things by using the float property. And that's exactly what we're going to go ahead and do here. I'm going to select float left for my logo and float right for the social media area. So let's go ahead now and see how that's going to affect our overall design. And there we go. We can see we've got our logo over here to the left, and we have our social media icons over here to the right. Another thing you're going to notice, though, is that our main navigation, the welcome, about, products, that for some reason or another has slipped up here into this sort of middle area between our logo and our social media icon. And that's not what we want. We want those to obviously be below those elements. So that's actually creating a bit of a problem here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a third ID style for the top navigation. And the property value statement that I'm going to go ahead and put in there is called clear both. Clear both. And what clear both will do is it says to the browser, when you find this div, make sure that this div clears both left and right floats that may have come before it. We'll talk more about what that means a little bit later. But if we go ahead and preview this in Chrome, we can now see that our top navigation, while it isn't formatted, now comes before it comes after our logo and our social media icons. And again, we're going to deal more with that clear statement in a later video. Now the next thing I want to go ahead and do is I want to go ahead and get these social media icons here. position the way I want them to. And again, in our completed project, you can see they're lined up here in an inline fashion, and the bullets have been removed from them. So I'm going to go ahead and close those two off and come back into Dreamweaver and come back in here, and I'm going to create another social media ID style. Only this time I'm going to specify that it targets any unordered lists that are inside of the social media icon or the social media div. You can see I've got my div specified here. I'm saying anytime we find any unordered lists with LI items, that's what we're going to target. And when we look at our HTML, we can see there's the ID, there's the unordered list, and there are the individual list items. And just like we did in our previous video, we're going to set the display property to inline. And we're also going to go ahead and remove the bullets by using the list style type property and the none value. And then I'm going to go ahead and close that off. Now this actually brings us to an interesting point. You can sort of see how the indentation has changed here. I've got this indented farther over than these other items. And that makes this a little less readable. So again, what I do is I put some extra spaces in, and I make sure that my tabs all more or less line up. Maybe not for everything on my page, but I just want to clean that up so it's a little bit more readable. And for the rest of the series, you're going to see me do that. Put extra blank lines in and tab things over to make things more readable. As you're writing your CSS code, do the same thing, but don't necessarily follow exactly what I do. Just do whatever makes it the most readable for you. For example, you may decide you don't like those styles being on 2 lines, so you just go ahead and put a space in and then the next property value statement. And either way works. It's all just a matter of making sure that your code is as readable as possible for you. So I've gone ahead and done that. I'm going to save my style sheet here. And we'll come back into Chrome. And we can now see that those items, the bullets have been removed, and they're now in an inline style. Now, the next thing that I want to go ahead and do is put some margin and some padding on some of these elements so that they appear a little bit more like what we want in here. And you can actually see everything on our page has some left and right padding on it. And we can tell it's padding because it doesn't have the background that we applied to the body. It has the white background color that we applied to the wrapper. And remember, padding is on the inside of an element. Margin is on the outside of an element. So I'm going to go ahead, close that off, and come back into Dreamweaver. And I'm going to come back up here into my wrapper style. And I'm going to create the style padding 0, 40 px. And again, that's going to put 0 pixels of padding on the top and the bottom, but 40 pixels of spacing on the left and the right. And when we take a look at our item here, we can now see the way that has laid out. Now let's go ahead and put a little bit of spacing around our logo, top and bottom. And also, we're going to work on that social media icon. So I'm going to come back in here to my logo style, and I'm going to go ahead, and in this case I could use either margin or padding. Doesn't matter. But I'm going to go ahead and use margin, and I'm going to put 50 pixels of padding on the top and bottom and 0 on the left and the right. We'll save that, and let's go ahead and take a look at this in Chrome or any browser you want. You can now see I've got some proper spacing in here on the top and the bottom of my logo. We want to do the same thing for our social media elements over here. We want to go ahead and push that down. We also want to align this text to the right instead of leaving it to the left over here. So I'm going to go ahead and come back in here to Dreamweaver, come back into my style sheet, and I'm going to set the top and bottom margins for the entire social media div to being 50 pixels top and bottom, but 0 left and right. And I'm going to go ahead and align that paragraph that we have in here to the right. So I'm going to go ahead and create another style, again for the social media ID, but this time for my p tags. And then I'm going to go ahead and text align and right. We'll close that off, and now let's go ahead and take a look and see the way these elements are going to look now. And there we go. Now we've got something that looks a little bit more like what we're going for in our project. And actually at this point I've actually zoomed this out to 75%, and I'm going to zoom that out to 75% just so that everything sort of looks the way it should, or when we compare those two there. And you can see actually as I go back and forth between these, I actually used a different background on this, but you can see there's a little bit more spacing here, and you can space that out to meet whatever you want. I'm going to go ahead and reduce that down to 40 pixels on the top and the bottom, and I'm going to refresh my browser, and you can see that bumps that up just a little bit more. And we still have some work to do. We haven't set up the any of the text formatting for right here, and we haven't done anything. We haven't perfected our spacing yet. But when you're initially laying out your CSS, you sort of want to get everything positioned first, and then go back in and apply all of your formatting. And that tends to work the best for the most people when they're working on creating a new design. So the next thing we want to go ahead and do is we want to set up this top navigation area here. And again, we can see here that these are laid out in an inline style as opposed to being block level the way they are now. The bullets are removed, and we also have a top border on this area right here. So let's go ahead. I'm going to close that off, and again I'm going to create another style for my top nav, only this time it's going to be for the unordered navigation list that's in there. And I want to select the display property and set it to inline. And I also want to use the list style type property and set that for none. And let's go ahead and save that, and then preview this in Chrome again, and you can see the way those are now laid out on our page. The next thing I want to do is I want to space these out so they look a little bit more like this. And basically what I want to do is I want to put some right hand padding or margin on each one of these elements. And again, in this case, because of the way we're laying this out, it doesn't matter whether it's margin or padding for us. So I'm going to go ahead and come back in here to Dreamweaver in my style sheet, and I'm going to go ahead and set up the margins for this. So I'm going to go ahead and type in the margin property, and I want 0 pixels on the top, but I want 20 pixels to the right, 0 on the bottom, and also 0 on the left. And let's save that, and now let's see how that's going to look in our browser. You can now see how those are spaced out just a little bit more. And again, you can come in here and you can give this whatever amount of space you want on the right. If I wanted to give it a little bit more space, which I probably do, I'm going to go ahead and change that 20 there to 40 and save it. And now let's take a look at that in Chrome, and you can see now I have a little bit more space to the right of each one of my elements. But you are going to notice there's actually a little bit of extra space over here to the left of my first link, and that isn't present in our finished design. We can also see that there's some top border on this right here. So let's go ahead and take care of that. And this extra space that's right over here is actually padding that's been applied to the UL element by the browser. So I'm going to go ahead and come back in here, and I'm going to create another element in my top nav. This time it's going to be for the unordered, for the UL element. And I'm going to go ahead and say padding is going to be 0. And I'm also going to say margin is going to be 0. And then finally, I'm going to go ahead and put some border on the top of that element. And this is just going to be a 1 pixel. I'm going to say it's going to be black, so I'm going to put in 3 zeros for black. But you could make it whatever color you want, including using Dreamweaver's color picker here. And I'm going to say the style of the line is going to be dotted. So we're going to save that. Oops, I forgot to close my bracket. Probably when you're writing your CSS, if things are not working for you, the first thing you want to check is to make sure you've closed all of your curly braces, that you haven't inadvertently left out a colon or a semicolon, or haven't typed a colon when you meant to type a semicolon, or vice versa. The punctuation is really important in CSS. And again, tabbing your items in, making them very readable by using extra spaces is going to help you read your code. And one of the reasons why people oftentimes like to place all of their elements on individual lines as opposed to putting them on the same line is it's very easy to check to make sure that you have a semicolon at the end of each one of your property value statements. And also very easy to make sure that you closed all of your opening curly braces. So again, just readability really is important. It may not seem important to keep your code nice and clean and readable at first, but later you're really going to see that that becomes critical. So we've gone ahead and we've created that UL style here, and let's go ahead and again preview that in Chrome, and you can see that extra space has been taken off of there, and that dotted line has been placed above my elements. But you're also going to notice everything is now pretty cramped in here. And it's not that way in our finished project. There actually is some space in here. Now here's a case where the difference between margin and padding is going to be important for you. You remember, margin is on the outside of an element, whereas padding is on the inside of an element. And the border separates the margin from the padding area. So you can see there's our border there, and there's that amount of space right there. So we can see, because this space is in between the element and the line there, that's going to be padding. So I'm going to go ahead and come back into my style sheet, and I'm going to go ahead and change this to put a little bit of top and bottom padding on my UL element. So I'm going to select 15 for top and bottom, but still 0 for left and right. And we'll save that and come back into Chrome. And now we can see we've got a little extra space that's in there. And again, there's a lot of little details that we still need to play around with, especially as relates to our text and font styling. But you can see how things are starting to take shape very quickly on our page. And you can see our main image here is actually positioned correctly. We don't need to put any styling on that at all right now. Later, when we do the rotating banner, we put that in, we are going to put a little bit of styling on it. But for right now, it looks just fine. In the next video, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to position this content area here, as well as this right-hand sidebar area, and set up our footer here. So I'll see you in the next video.